Welcome to Gray Maybe, a limited series podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, grief. My name is Jillian Schmitz. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I found that things aren't just black or white, or a simple yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I'll be sharing my own process through personal stories and interviews with others in an effort to help investigate the process of and recovery through grief. If you'd like to share your story, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we start. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: death, brain cancer, sudden death. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Gray Maybe podcast. If you're just tuning in, thanks so much for joining me today. And consider listening to previous seasons of the Gray Maybe. I have season 1 and 2 out. This is season 3. And if you are a repeat listener, thank you so much for coming back again and again. Today, I have an old friend here on the podcast. And I say old, not because we're old, because we're certainly not old, but I haven't seen her in a long time. We used to work together. I still have very fond memories of us working together. Her name is Cara Lidberg. She was a professional dancer, but guys, she's still kind of actually a professional dancer because she runs a very popular TikTok account called Retired Professionals, which is her and other retired professionals dancing TikTok dances and things like that. So I'm actually going to say she is out of retirement as a dancer in this new medium, but we used to do actual like professional jobs of like traveling to do very more cliche professional jobs, but she is, in my eyes, still a professional dancer. She's also a mother. She's also a businesswoman. She also has some CBD passions that maybe she'll talk a little bit about, although it's off topic. Well, she'll give you a little hit. Maybe it helps with grief. I don't know. We could talk about it. But Cara Lidberg, thank you so much for coming to the Gray Maybe podcast. It's so good to see you.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited when I got your message to ask me on here. Thank you so much. And it's been so nice to see your face. It's been a while. And I mean, yeah, I don't know if I would call myself professional anymore, Jillian, but
I
we have fun
mean,
doing those dances. So it keeps me, keeps my brain fresh and keeps my body active. So
listen, you don't have to tell me all your business, but I know that some of us can make money on these social media platforms. So if you're making money off TikTok dancing, I think I'm going to put that in the category. And let's be real, with the strike right now, influencers and people online are some of the only people that can make money right now doing
right.
entertainment. So, but okay, I'll whatever you say, Cara, but you still look exactly the same as when I last saw you, which might have been a while ago. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't
almost
know how long.
10 plus
Yeah, I
years
wanted
ago.
to say 10, but that
Yeah,
felt too dramatic, just in my own heart.
I know. I know. It's going by too fast.
Yeah, but I do remember us in our times, like literally, like I can recall it in my brain. Like I was just telling her before we logged on to this platform to record that I remember us like just having conversation, waiting in the in the galley of, the plane before we deplaned, to go do a job in the Bahamas or whatever.
Yes.
Um, which was super fun. But so season 3, Gray Maybe. We talk sad, we talk grief. And I thought of you immediately as one of those people because over the years I've watched you, kind of my only contact with you has really been online social media. And I've seen you from time to time, but pretty consistently post things about grief from when you were kind of maybe first in the thick of it when you were ready to talk about it, but then also very consistently, which
Yeah.
that's been what I've really um I don't want to say enjoyed. It's not enjoyed. I've appreciated. That's what I've really
Right.
appreciated, right? Is that it's not, I think we would all love for grief to be this one thing that happened that one time. And now I'm here and it's different. And I think we hope that for everyone who's been through a significant grief. Um, but I just don't think that's probably real. And I think we're all just kind of like placating that a little bit. But so when I
Yeah.
see people who consistently still are like, hey, this day is hard, or hey, this thing is, and hey, just a reminder, grief is this, this, and this. It's a reminder that, like, oh, right, like Cara had that loss that she talked about publicly, and she's still talking about that loss. And it's not like, oh, she's still talking about that loss. It's like, no,
Right.
like, it's like any recovery, it's ongoing, right? Like, I don't know too many people who have recovered from anything. I'll use alcohol as a very common example, or like one that people might be able to relate to just as an idea. You don't recover. You don't like make it. You don't like, and I'm better now and I can now drink like a normal person. No, we all know that,
No.
like, if you're an alcoholic, like, that's kind of the deal. You're kind of something you're working on every day, kind of more like a practice. So I love that that's kind of how I've seen you show up on social media in addition to the other things that you do on social media. And I'm wondering if you would share a little bit with people listening about your loss and anything you want to comment about that. And I'll try not to interject too many
Yeah, no, and
thoughts.
I think that's one of the biggest thing that surprised me about grief was that it is ongoing. Like I thought I would be sad right afterwards, and I'll get into how my mom died and everything, but I thought I'd be sad and then it would get better. But it doesn't get better, and it pops up like randomly here or there in the most unexpected ways. And so that's why I wanted to share about it because I hadn't heard anyone talk about grief. And I was like, holy shit, this is hard. Like this is
Mm,
not something it's not easy. And I needed a voice. So I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and be that voice for other people to feel like they're not alone going through it. And I don't know, Jillian, I don't know if you know that my dad actually passed first. So he died in
I didn't.
2013. Yep, he died
Okay.
in 2013. Um, I was still dancing in Vegas. I was actually at the Latin Grammys, like rehearsal. And I had emailed him to say, hey, can you pick me up for Thanksgiving? And he never responded. And so I had a police officer do a well check, and he had a brain aneurysm and just gone. And so I called my mom, like, because they were divorced at the time. And I said, do I come home? Do I finish the job? And she's like, well, I mean, he's already gone.
Yeah.
What, you need to finish the
Yeah.
job. Like,
Yeah.
nothing you can do now, Cara.
Yeah.
Um, so I had that, and I wasn't that close with my dad. So I had that experience with his death, which was unexpected. And then
Right.
I had the experience with my mom's death, which was very expected because
Mm,
she was battling cancer. And um, it's I'm getting the goosebumps because it's definitely a different type of grief for
mm,
each one, the unexpected and then the expected one. Like with my dad, I'm like, what the things I didn't say before he died because I had no clue that he was going to
right.
pass. And then with my mom, it's all the things like I was able to say a lot, but then watching someone you love slowly die is also not, cool.
No, it's really rough.
um,
It's really rough. And but I've talked on the podcast a bit this season about um uh like grief that is shocking, right, which would be your
right.
dad, and then anticipatory grief, which would be your
Yes.
mom. And they
Yes.
both have very different emotional
It's so
responses
different.
regardless even of close or not close, just how they feel very
Yes.
different, and they both have their own challenges. And I'm glad that you brought up the things that you never got to say, and then the things, and that is, if there was ever to say a benefit of anticipatory grief, it
Yes.
is that it can propel people to right some wrongs, get their side of the street clean, and say things that they that need to be said.
Yes,
Okay, I did not know
1000%.
that. I mean, I feel like now that you're telling me this, like I'm like, Latin Grammys. I know I've heard you talk about the Latin Grammys before. Like I'm
Yes.
having a bit of a flashback. So I must have heard either someone told me or like you might have mentioned it. So um it's coming back a little bit. Okay, but I did not recall that. I just really remember I know you were really close with your mom and that
Hmm.
was like I feel like I knew she was sick and before so it wasn't like I saw oh Kara's mom died passed, like I knew she was sick. You had been transparent about that as well.
Yes, yes. Yeah, she had been battling cancer since I was in college, and she was in remission for, I think, 7 years. And then it came back pretty quickly into her liver because she had breast cancer, and then it came to her liver. And then I got married in June of 2016, and she passed in September. And it was just like I had found out I was pregnant, and I got to tell her that the baby was a girl and that she
Mhm.
would take my mom's middle name, or her first name as my
Mhm.
daughter's middle name. And then my mom kind of just like let go after. I think she knew that I was safe because I
Right.
had a husband and I was going to start a family, but then she never got to meet her granddaughter. And so
Right.
that's like, it's all that guilt, grief too afterwards. That it's like the things that she missed out on.
Right.
Like I start putting myself into her position and
Right.
like all the things that she's missing now that she should have been a part of.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and I I that anticipatory stuff of like the future grieves, the
Yep.
future things that someone misses out on and that you miss out on in getting to share those things, right? Like I know you've talked
Yes.
about too about the mothering experience and how like you wanted to, I might be paraphrasing, but it felt what I gathered from that and what I recall is like the idea of like, yeah, this really important event that, you were so close with your mom that passed down of information in that way in the moment of it happening.
Yes.
Um that seemed like was especially just so heartbreaking. I did that with my dad passed in April and we had a very complicated relationship and it was anticipatory. He had a debilitating illness, so I watched him slowly really get taken by this disease, and it was a motherfucker. It's PSP, and it just like it's just like you lose your motor skills one at a time, and then you
Oh,
just become like completely almost slightly vegetative. He didn't get to that point, but you stop
right.
swallowing, and then you can't eat and stuff like that. So that was really hard to watch, even with someone who I had a complicated relationship with. And um, I felt very anticipatory for the things, not only that he was going to miss out on in the future, possibly, but how I kind of perceived how he decided to deal with his life or the people in his life. Right. So,
Yes.
like, that was kind of weird. Like, and I have to, like, I try to slightly correct myself because I'm like, you don't know that that's how he felt. Like that's how you feel watching. I
Right.
just try to keep myself so that I don't go way into it because it just gets kind of like because to me becomes like really sad. But that's all my own opinion on it, anyways. But I
Right.
that it's different. Your mom's situation is a little different, but that just reminded me that like yeah, for as my dad got sicker and sicker, I very much was like bro, this was it. Like, this is what, like looking back, like, how
Yes.
was it for you? Is this how you wanted
Well,
things? Like,
and I don't know about you, Jillian, but I didn't know in the time that I should have been asking a lot more questions, kind of like as it was nearing the end, like questions that I needed to know about their life, like things
right.
that I can never ask now. Like,
Yeah.
um, and I've seen things now that
Hmm.
like a list of questions to ask people like about their life, so you always have it. And I did not know to do that, and I was scared too. I think
Right.
I was scared to ask a lot of questions, and my mom didn't want to talk about it, and I was always just like, can you just tell me how you're feeling? Like I know this sucks, and but
Hmm.
she would never say anything. She like always wanted to make sure I was okay first. Um, and I mean, none of us were okay, so it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
no one was talking, and
Yeah.
then she just
Yeah. And I do think that might be a like a characteristic of a certain demographic. I don't know the age of
yes.
your mom. My parents were boomers, so there just wasn't a lot of talking.
No, you're right. You're right. That generation didn't talk about their
No.
feelings or what they're going through.
No. No. And they kind of tried that with us, like quit crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we were a little different, and now the next generation is really different. And the generation
Oh,
after that, forget about it. They're running
I
stuff already. So
know.
just,
I know.
surrender. And I'm down for it. I'm totally cool with it.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that generation too, like, even, and I only say that to say, like, like you said, you tried to ask or you didn't know how to ask
Yes.
it. Like, if I would have even asked my dad, I don't know how much he would have, he was mute the last 2 years. Um,
Oh gosh.
yeah, from this disease. He just really couldn't talk. Well, and actually, I don't know if he couldn't talk. He didn't want to talk.
Wow.
I probably couldn't talk though. A lot of it, he could muster a word here and there, but it was definitely, declining. And it does affect the speech, that particular disease. So I don't even know if he would have really been honest, but yeah,
Right.
especially like the big traumas and stuff like that. Like, hey, like, what was it like growing up? Oh, we got our asses beat all the time. Cool. Do you want to talk about that? Like,
Right.
not so
Yes.
much. Like, not really. I mean, that's just my dad, but so
No, I know.
I think it's a really good point to anyone listening. Like, generationally, I think we have a responsibility to maybe change some of that, or that it could be a goal to try to be a little more open and transparent with, people younger than you or people that are surrounding you, you know, as we
Yes.
age. I think we will be. I do think we will be.
I
Um,
know she didn't even want to tell me the cancer came back. Like she was just hiding a
oh,
lot of things to protect me, and I was like, this is actually hurting. Now I know it was actually hurting me in the long run, but she thought of it as protecting me. So it's just how to do things differently in the future. Like I know I won't be hiding illnesses and stuff.
yeah, because you can still feel it, and you still are
Yeah.
anticipating that fear. Like, because my family had a tendency to do that with me because I was so far away. They're in Minnesota, I'm
Yes.
out here, so they don't want to let me know something unless it's really a big deal. But you're just sitting
Yes.
there every second, like something could be happening. They're not going to tell me right now because they know that
Yes.
I'm not there.
Yep.
And so you'll hear about
1000%.
things 2, 3 days later. Oh, I had to go to the
This happened.
emergency room, and you're
Yes.
like, where was I in this? Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, well, we didn't want to bother you. And it's like, okay. And I know a lot of
Yes.
families do that. And I totally understand why. And I can't even say that under some circumstances, I might not do the same thing. Like, I'm not going to make my
Right.
mom worry if I can give her the summed up scenario at the afterwards.
Right.
But it
Right.
doesn't necessarily help with the anxiety of what's going on. And like, if you've ever
Yeah.
had someone have cancer, you are I mean, I would imagine you're going to constantly be like, it could come back like that. When's the other
Yep.
shoe going to drop, um
Always.
unfortunately, because of
Yes.
what that disease is and how it works. What Was there anything, going through with your mom or even with your dad, that you can recall? Was there anything that you were like, this was really helpful for my process, or things, was there any kind of tools or helpful things that you can recall?
Yeah, I think finding a grief community online was super helpful to know that like what I was feeling was normal because I had never, I mean, honestly, Jillian, when my mom passed, I was pregnant. So I tried not to feel anything because I was scared it was going to hurt the baby, which is like
Hmm.
the worst thing to do, right? I didn't process anything. I just kind of shoved it all inside.
Hmm.
And then so finding a forum online that had people going through the exact same thing and saying things like, this is normal. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay that you're feeling this way. And
Hmm.
to understand that it wasn't going to be a fast process and it would be like an ongoing
Hmm.
thing. Um, and then also, I was just talking to my mother in law about this, like having people, something that was helpful was having people bring food over so I wouldn't have to worry about feeding myself.
Hmm.
Um, and takes like one less thing off your plate,
Hmm.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Especially when I was pregnant, I'm like, I don't want to cook. Like I am starving, but I don't want to cook. And
Hmm.
people just brought food over. I didn't have to see them. I didn't want to talk to people.
Right.
I wanted to be in my own little bubble, and
Yeah.
that was super helpful.
Yeah, it can be pretty draining to have to entertain it
Yes.
if you're not having the energy to, because people,
Yes.
I've talked about this maybe even in every episode so far, is like, when you're going through a grieving process, like, and people ask you, "Oh, how are you doing?" Like, if you're a people pleaser in that moment, you're going to be like, "I'm
Yeah.
okay. I'm fine."
I'm
Because you can
fine.
tell how badly
Yeah.
they want you to be okay. And
Yes.
so, and you can,
Yes.
and like some people, not so much. Some people have been through this shit. They're like, "How you doing? It's bad, right? It's shitty. Yep, yep, it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell it's bad." Like the fog, the brain fog. Like you can feel it. But most people, the anxiety that they have for you in pain
Yes.
trumps everything. And so they're looking at you like, be okay, be okay, be okay. And you can
Yes.
feel that. And you're like, I can't, I'm okay. I'm fine.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you're fine. I'm fine. It's fine. And
Yeah,
so,
they yeah, they ask me, but they don't really want to talk about it.
no,
No.
no, nobody, no, because
Nobody.
it triggers their own freak out. They
Yep.
have to like, if they're anybody who has any semblance of empathy or even sympathy, they're going to have a hard time in that moment because they have to deal with their own feelings about that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, but people ask because they want, but they don't really want to know. It's true.
No.
Was that grief community? Do you remember off the top of your head like how you found it or the name of it? And if not, you can always tell me after, and I can put it in the show notes.
I'll find it for you. I can't
Okay.
remember.
Yeah, no worries.
There's a couple of
Okay,
pages
great.
that I really liked. Yeah.
Great. Good. Um, yeah, and I can imagine too, being pregnant, you had to take your health seriously. You couldn't just waste away like some people, like myself, would
Right.
probably do, like just to like I can't eat, and you had to think of. So that was probably really helpful. So those of you listening, if you know someone around you who's really suffering, going through a significant grief or not significant, if they're just suffering,
Right.
that can be one, especially without the expectation of socialization,
Yes.
right?
Just drop it
Like,
off. Just
yeah,
drop it off.
and some people might want the socialization, so you kind of have to
True.
figure
Yeah.
it out and be really open. If people are really lonely, I don't know, like, or that could come later. But I know for me too, like it just the people pleasing of having to
Yes.
put on a show and entertain on top of it is just probably too much.
Yes.
Um,
And to your point, Jillian, like I liked when people would not give me pressure to be fine, but then they would also talk about my mom with me and not like always in the past tense, just like talk about like good memories and stuff and not be scared to bring her up.
yeah.
I did want to talk about her.
hmm
So,
I think, and that's like the craziest thing is across the board, people don't want to bring it up.
no,
Like, they don't wanna bring the person up. Like, they wanna be like, "Are you okay?" But they don't wanna bring the person up, and I think it's, like, this idea of, like, "Well, I don't wanna remind them," but it's like, you're
right.
not gonna forget it at all, and nor
Oh,
do
yeah.
you want to, because that feels like a whole
Yeah.
other abandonment and sadness and, like, terrible thing. Um, so I think, like, as a culture, we have to start, like, just really outing that it's such a natural. I don't know what it's so weird. It's such a well, maybe it's not natural. Maybe it's me growing up in the Midwest of like, don't say, don't
Yeah.
talk about politics. Don't talk about how much money you make. Don't bring up, it's someone who's passed. Don't bring up misfortune. Don't speak ill of the dead. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of these rules, but I think there is this natural inclination to not bring it up. Like, oh, I'm going to open an old wound. I'm going to pour salt in a wound. But it's like anybody who's had someone pass, usually it's like, I noticed for myself, it's like, let me tell you the story.
Yes.
Let me
Yes.
tell you how it all went down. It's like
Yep.
I've been to the other side and I've come back and let me tell you what I've learned. Let me tell you what I saw.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like even if it's uncomfortable for people to listen, your job is just to listen.
And that's what I also wanted was just listen. Don't give
Yeah.
me the platitudes.
hmm
Just listen. Like, because what
hmm
you say is not going to make me feel better.
No.
Like the God needed her more. I was like,
Oh yeah, no.
no, no.
No. No, and I have like the do's and don'ts of grief that I'm putting
Yes.
on all these, and some of them, oh man, some I'm so guilty of like in the past, and like some of them you realize how knee jerk they are to do. Like one of them was like, don't say things like at least. Like, and I
Oh
was like,
my God.
oh my gosh, yes, everybody does that, and I've probably done
Yes.
it too. Like, and it doesn't always have to be, like what we would consider or as what we would all agree on as a large grief, because there's also other griefs like miscarriage and things like that
Yes.
are just as big for people and women going
Yes.
through them and men too maybe, but like people say that kind of stuff, well at least it happened earlier, well at least it's like no, those like if
No.
you're going through it, like that's not going to be helpful. So yeah,
No.
the platitudes, save
Yes.
them, just and this is the hardest thing though is for people to sit and listen. That's
Yes.
what's just really hard to do because people are feeling their own feelings about it. They're watching you. They're feeling bad for you. They're feeling bad for themselves. They're feeling bad for you. They're questioning their own mortality. They're feeling bad for you. And it's like, I have to purge this feeling. Let me say something like, well, at least and then it's like, oh, no,
Yep. You just ruined it.
I know, I know. Yeah. So I think that's been pretty uniform and universal of people that I've talked to is, just listen to whatever they
Yes.
want to say. And, you know, I think it's important to learn how to hold space without offering advice or suggestion.
Yes. Yes.
But
That's
it's
been
really
hard for
hard.
me to learn as an
It's so
adult and
hard.
like growing up. You're just like, just sit there and listen. Like that's
It's so
all we
hard.
have to do.
I know,
I
so
know.
easy, but not easy, but easy. It's simple, but not
Yes.
easy. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, but it's a really good tool. And then always, at some point, if you're like me and you just can't take it, you're like, well, let me know if you're ever open to suggestion. That's my thing. Like, I try not to give
Yeah.
unsolicited advice. I just can't help myself. Trying to get better at it. But okay,
Yes.
yeah. So I think we can all agree, the platitudes save it. Just listen. Food A+. Get the food meal train going.
Yep.
That was something in the Midwest that was really common, and I've seen it out here as well. That people kind of like out here they do like Excel spreadsheets. Like,
Oh,
oh yes,
nice.
I know a mom group that's very close to me that they full out have like a spreadsheet, days, meals, things, preferences, allergies. Oh yeah, they're very,
Wow.
oh, they're organized. Yeah, so
Yeah.
these
We just
are
give Uber gift cards and stuff like that over
even
here.
better. And that's, look, what a great easy thing, right? Like if you're someone who's like, I mean, I don't know what to bring them and I can't cook, and like, oh,
Yep.
look, DoorDash gift cards, Uber Eats gift cards,
Yep.
even grocery store. I mean, not that like you're going to be in the mood to go grocery shopping, but eventually you might. And who knows,
Right.
finances, when there's been a grief, finances can be rough. Um, so there's, things to consider. Now, do you have like a belief system or any kind of like a spirituality that kind of helped with this with these kinds of losses, or did it solidify one for you, or were you
You know
like,
what?
you know what, now I quit?
That's it. That's what I
Okay.
did. I say I quit. There's for me,
Yeah.
when both of these happened like kind of back to back, 3 years
Hmm.
apart, and then while I was pregnant, I was like, how is there an
Yeah.
actual God that would like take away this incredible woman right before she was going to have a granddaughter, and now she can't help her daughter? And I was just like, nope. And I dove deep into things and started questioning a lot of things I had never questioned before. And I think that there's a higher power, like the universe and all this stuff, but I don't. I have unsubscribed from religion
Yeah.
due to
Yeah.
these losses.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like very valid and very normal. Especially for those of us who were maybe hanging on by a thread in some of
Yep.
those, I like, who already kind of grew up being a bit of a renegade in these things, or like, ex members, to then not be able to get kind of like an answer that satisfied us in these
Right.
moments, especially. And that's another thing, like when dealing with people with grieving, sadness, hardship, like if you have a strong spirituality, amazing. If you have a strong religion, amazing. But just know that other people don't. And that
Yes.
sometimes when you bring that into someone else's experience as like you're trying to be kind and nice, like I'm praying for you. And I don't think that's bad, but it's hard sometimes if people are like, I don't, I'm not down with, like, God, this, or, this, or,
Well, and that
yeah,
was just it. It was God's timing, and God, like I said, God needed her more, and she's in heaven, and I'm like, well, she should be here with me.
mhm,
So that's not helping me at all. That somewhat this God needs to take her more than I need her, because I really fucking need her, because I am just
yeah.
about to raise a kid, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And also, I just like to point out, if God is all powerful, why does He need your mom? I'm sorry, I'm
That's
just
what I'm
saying.
saying.
Your mom
That's
is
what I'm.
amazing, but I'm just
Yes,
saying,
he
if
didn't
He's
need
all
her that much.
hello, like, is He weak or is He strong? Like, I need to know, because
Right. Exactly.
what is it? That super smart guy, that super smart scientist,
Neil deGrasse.
yes, he
Yes.
said you can't be all powerful and all good, right? You can't be all good
Yep.
and all powerful.
Yep.
Brain
I know.
explosion.
I know. I love watching his stuff on all this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so that kind of it turned you away from
Mhm.
that kind of a thing, which, I have a tendency to believe more in organized chaos, like that
Yeah,
everything is just kind of
seriously.
organized chaos, and that there may not be a lot of rhyme or reason. I would really like to have like a everything happens for a reason, and sometimes I can get there. I think it's better for me. I think it's more healthy for me if I can think that way. Um, but sometimes I have a real hard time subscribing and
Yeah.
really, really getting in there, because I see these other things that happen, and I'm just like, none of this makes sense to me.
No.
And I guess like maybe it's not for me to make sense of, but still like I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah, you're
Uh
kind of just left questioning, like, what was the reason
yeah.
then? Like, what was the reason? Because this
Yeah.
reason is awful.
Yeah. For real. Yeah.
Yeah.
What what do you I know you've said a lot of things periodically on Instagram about grief. Um and what do you want people, and maybe we've kind of already talked about this, but what do you want people to know about grief? And it can be specific to your one experience, or it could just be in general because you've had more than one.
I think I want people to know that it's okay to grieve how you need to grieve. Like, and for me, I felt a lot of guilt because I didn't grieve the same for my dad that I did for my mom. And I was like, what does that mean? But I don't need to question it, right? Like, you're going to grieve differently for things. One of my friends just got divorced and she's grieving differently than I'm grieving, and it's okay to feel how you feel when you feel it. Um, and I'll like feel guilty if I'm with my kids and all of a sudden something happens. Like, I'll see another mom and her with the grandma or whatever, and I'll just start crying. And my Parker, my daughter, is just like, "Are you okay, mommy? Is it because you lost your mommy?"
Mm-hmm.
And she knows. And so I think talking about it openly and like sharing and not just like suffocating it inside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would tell people to share with others and have other people listen, and um, to not feel guilty when you feel it, because you do, you like, all of a sudden you're happy and you feel happy, you feel guilty that you're happy too sometimes. I know I was like, wait, I feel happy, I'm a shitty person, my mom just died. But you also have those brief moments of like, I'm okay, I can do this, I'm happy, and that's okay, that's allowed. um so to embrace, feel how you feel, embrace how you're feeling, and just kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think shame and guilt isn't discussed enough in across the
Yeah.
board. I think it's such a like what's the word? Lascivious, like sneaky little emotion because I
Yes.
think it seeps into kind of everything, and I don't think we always notice it, but I think it's why we do a lot of the things we do or react a lot of the ways we react. So, yeah, the shame of or the guilt of not grieving the right way, right?
Yes.
Like not being
Yes.
sad enough or having these moments of happiness and then feeling guilt and shame, feeling like, oh, well, this parent I grieve different than this parent, or this
Yep.
grief was different than this grief. Like, you know, I've said before, like there are certain people who have passed that it's very weird. I had said in a different episode, I had this friend who was not necessarily super close to me, but for some reason when they passed, I was way more upset than other people, and it doesn't always
It,
make sense.
right, it affects you differently, and you're like,
Hmm.
wait, why did that one affect me so much? I
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah. And I don't have an answer for it, but,
right.
it just is what it is. But, I think one of the worst things we can do is kind of like bring the shame in, and it's automatic. So it's not like,
Yes.
then double shame. Then you feel shame for feeling shame. And then,
Yes. Yes,
and
it's
now you're in a
compounding.
shame spiral. Um,
Yes.
shame spiral. But I think just even acknowledging, like, oh, I don't have to feel bad about that. That's just kind of what it is.
Right.
Um, but I'm really glad that you brought that up. So the grief community, the online communities,
Mhm.
are they like a forum, like a board, and people are writing and then people are responding, or is it like how is it set up?
So I originally found the Instagram accounts, and then people will respond. And there's one account, this is the one that I really enjoyed. Every Mother's Day and Father's Day, she'll like ask if you want to have a grief buddy to get through that. And that's where I found a community, because they'll lump you into another group and you guys can all chat on the chat group and all that stuff. And just you're around people that understand. And it feels good because not everyone understands. Like, I'm so happy for these people that haven't lost anyone yet. Like,
Hmm.
but they don't get it, and you want to be with people that understand and like listen to you and know what you're going through.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. I call that find your people. And I
Yes.
don't mean like find your best friend, although they're your people
No.
in a different way. You have to find someone who's had the same trauma that you've had. The
Yeah,
people
and
that
it
have,
bonds you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very you have to become part of the club. Sorry if
Yes.
you don't want to ever be a Kara didn't want to be a part of the my mom passed away club, but
No.
she's in that club, and it's a club
Yep.
for a reason, because other people understand that club. Um,
Yes.
and so, yeah, you got to find your people. I think that makes big difference. Um, Now you're big into CBD.
Yes.
I have not found I haven't had results from CBD. I've tried it a couple different times under a couple different circumstances. Has CBD helped you emotionally at all, do you think? Or is it more of like a body ache and pain type sitch?
No, definitely. So what I realize is with my dad, a lot of my grief is anxiety, and
Mm.
it's manifesting as anxiety because he had the aneurysm, and I'm like, well,
Right.
shit, that could just happen in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
So when he died, I couldn't sleep because I thought for sure I was going to just die with an aneurysm. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sleeping, and I wish I had CBD back then because it helps me with my anxiety, which then lets me sleep because it shuts
Mm-hmm.
my brain off and I can just fall asleep. Um, so for me, I'm taking it mostly for anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of lets
And
me
that helps
breathe.
you.
Otherwise,
And
I
you
get
don't get
wound up.
high. You don't get
No,
high? Okay, so I just want to
not
say
at
that
all.
because not everybody understands the difference between CBD and THC.
Yeah, there. Well, we have. I mean, my company that I work for has different kinds of CBD. Some that have zero THC,
Mm-hmm.
and then some that has the legal amount, which is 0.3%. But it has way more CBD,
It's,
so you'll
yeah,
never feel
you're not going to get
anything.
high. You're
No,
not going to be running around not knowing your
correct.
name like
Yeah.
some of us
Yes.
who in the past have smoked weed, and it
Yeah.
is not the weed of
Exactly.
the 90s. I'll just put it that way.
No, it is not. It's a much different
Oh
experience,
my
that's
God.
for
Yeah, no,
sure.
I'm out. Like I had to tap out years ago. I was like,
Yeah.
um, for those of you who are able to do this and construct a normal life, I am impressed because
Oh,
I took one hit of this government modulated weed and I cannot remember my name or sentences for a week afterwards. A week.
I know. Jillian, I took one. I was so dumb, and I took one on a gig once, like a gummy,
Like a gummy, like a weed gummy. Yeah.
like a weed one, and I was
Okay.
like so paranoid. I was like go-go dancing, didn't know
Oh
what I was
no.
doing, and I'm like, this is the why did I do this? And I felt terrible for days.
Days.
So I was nervous about CBD too, but no, don't
You
feel
haven't
anything
had that
like that
experience. Okay.
at all. Not at all. No.
Okay. And yes. Okay, so that's good to know. Now I know you don't you've unsubscribed from
Yeah.
the spiritual or not even spiritual, but the religious connotations
Right.
uh of afterlife things. But have you had any kind of unexplained mystical magical experiences that
Yes.
yes, okay, I want to hear them.
I'm so glad
Give
you
them to
asked this
me.
question because I love
Give
this
them all.
story.
Yeah, give all
Um,
the stories that you got.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was pregnant and I was gonna have a baby shower and I was shopping for a dress for the baby shower and I couldn't find anything and I was
Uh-oh.
just, you don't feel
Sorry
great when
about
you're
that.
pregnant anyways, like nothing fits and I was just giving up. And finally my girlfriend that was with me was like, "Let's go to your mom's favorite store," which was White House Black Market.
So Kara was just about to tell me a spooky special unexplained mystical magical experience story and then the Wi-Fi cut out.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
That's what
My mom's
Roderick
like,
said.
"Nope."
Yeah, Roderick was like, "Well, I just saw it as another spooky special thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay, we'll talk about that." So, we had to wait a second and then you dialed back up old school no, not dial up, but
No,
okay.
my
So,
mom must have been like, "You weren't telling that right. You need to
right.
start over."
Start over, repeat. Was it is your mom that kind of person where she would be
Oh,
funny like that? Yeah.
yes. Oh, yes.
Like
1000%.
little jokey, little
Yes, she likes to mess with
little
us.
fiery. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Oh,
So
very
that's
much.
fun. Okay, so proceed. We'll see if we can get a
Okay.
story out correctly.
Okay, so I was shopping for my baby shower and I had no dresses. I was losing it. I was starting to get upset because nothing looked good on me. And my friend that was with me was like, "Let's try your mom's favorite clothing store," which was White House Black Market.
Okay, now this
And
is you're
I
pregnant with your second daughter.
No, this is my first, right
Your
after
s-
she
Oh,
died.
right. Okay, because you
Yes.
were still pregnant. Okay,
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So it was a couple months later. And I
You do
don't
have a
really shop
son.
at
My bad. You have a daughter and a son.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
Yep. I Parker was when my mom died.
Yes.
So we went to White House Black Market and I'm like, there's not gonna be anything there. Like it's all white and black. What am I gonna find for a baby shower in White House Black Market? Um, but then I found this really cute floral dress and I went to go try it on. There was no one in the dressing rooms. It was my friend and I. my best friend that knew my mom, she was there when my mom passed with me. Like, well, we weren't there, but she was at the hospital with me up until she passed, which also my mom waited until I left to pass. I don't
Yeah.
think she wanted me to see that. So
Yeah.
we get into the dressing room. I put the dress on, and all of a sudden, a massive whiff of like my mom's perfume fills the dressing room. And I'm like, dude, Sarah, can you smell that? And she said, yeah. And I said, there's got to be some lady that just came in. Go check and see if there's other people around the dressing room.
Hmm.
No one. The people that worked there hadn't even come back. Nothing. There was literally no one in the dressing room, and we both smelled it. And I mean, I just started crying. She started crying because she was there to be like,
Hmm.
this is the dress. This is I'm here still.
Right.
Um, and so it was just this massive like, okay, you are here. I get it. I get
I
it.
love that. I love that. Is there anything else other
Yeah.
than your mom kicking your Wi-Fi off?
Yeah. Well, I've read that. Have you read the book Signs? It's just called Signs.
No, but I'm gonna put it in
Okay.
the show notes.
Read the book called Signs. And it helps you kind of like notice the signs.
Okay.
Well, basically she tells you to pick something abstract that wouldn't just be like random, like a red truck or whatever coming by.
Right.
Um, so I picked two bluebirds. And I'm like, Mom, like anytime I need her, I'm like, show me two bluebirds. And like
Hmm.
the other day I was kind of stressed and I'm like, are you here? And right outside the window
Hmm.
came flying two bluebirds. Um, so it's a good book to read to kind of help you find the signs and know that your loved ones are still there.
That's great. I love that. No one has mentioned that book. I can't wait to link
Oh yeah.
that in the show notes. I'm gonna start thinking, Dad, lottery winning me. Let's
Yes.
let's go. Let's show
Seriously.
me the winning. Show me my winning lottery to know. But
Yes. Yes.
I love that. That's great. Um, now you had just been like freshly married, right? How you had been married for how long? Right
It
before
was
your mom
three
passed?
months.
3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 months. Now, how did like this was there stress on like your brand new marriage and like now that you've got this you can't just like get to know each other as a married couple, you have to kind of go through the fire.
Yes, I honestly I've said to him numerous times, like, I'm sorry that you married and not really, but I was like, I'm sorry you married someone like I'm not the same version of myself
Mhm.
that I was when we were dating,
Mhm.
Like I felt way more broken
Mhm.
and like I'm like having to put the pieces back together and then he's having to help me put the pieces back together and I'm just like so appreciative that he's been patient with this process and it wasn't like the brand new wonderful start to a marriage, right? It was like boom,
Mhm.
here's your first trauma, see how you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, cuz things got real fast for him,
Real
cuz
fast.
grief in a relationship is difficult and that's with people who have been together for a really long time. So if you're
Yes.
newly in a newer situation in a new way, it can be probably pretty taxing. Um and like for s- for someone who's gone through that, like do you have a suggestion for things that maybe that he did that were great or things that you would suggest to someone as a significant other like what was helpful like in that role? What can you do?
I know it's so hard because what can you do?
Yeah.
um I think I do remember the one time when they first called me to tell me my mom had passed. All he did was just sat there with
Mhm.
me, and just held my hand. And even now, if something comes up, I'll get mad, but he knows it's not about him most of
Right.
the time. It's about the grief that's coming up. So
Right.
I guess I would say is like just give your partner grace
Mhm.
and kind of ask, hey, is this really what you're upset about? Or is something else going on? And then usually I just break down. I'm like, I just miss my mom. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm yelling at you because I miss my mom and I don't have an outlet besides getting frustrated with you
Yeah.
for not putting something away, you know?
Mhm.
So just giving someone grace for not understanding their own feelings and helping them figure
Right.
out those feelings.
Yeah. Um, I'm kind of talking out of school, but in November, this past November, Stefan lost his brother unexpectedly.
Oh
He
no.
had cancer, but it was like really far along, and he didn't find out till it was very late. Like, so it was a shock, but then an anticipatory because he didn't
Right.
pass right away, but it was like very fast and out of nowhere. Um, and he also, I think, had if, as an onlooker, seemed slightly complicated relationship, but still,
Right.
was very difficult. And then after that loss, you know, he, you know, I'm trying to think of the order of things. He had injured his bicep, so he had to have was needed to get surgery on the bicep, and then he got in a car crash, and then and then he left one day, and the kettle, all of a sudden I smelled burning, and I ran out to the kitchen, and he had been boiling water to make tea, and then left. Like he had
Left.
like before he was gonna have tea before he left, but then forgot and like left.
Right.
And I was like, I finally was like, look, I know it's hard, but I
Yeah.
need you to just try, just take a little more time. Just slow down. When life gets fast, I need you to just slow down.
Yes.
Just slow
Yes.
down a little bit.
But having someone say that to you, like, and my
Right, just
husband
slow
was just
down.
like, just take a breath.
Yeah, just
Just
slow
take
down.
a breath. Yep.
Because I get it. Like you are somewhere else, and there's nothing I can do about that. But like, this is getting
Yes.
dangerous.
Yeah. Yes. Please don't burn our house down.
This is getting dangerous. This has already happened
Yes.
a couple times. Like, some things are happening here that I just need
Yes.
a little more awareness to be brought back, come back down to earth a little
Right.
bit. But it's hard, because the fog
Yep.
and like your brain is consumed in a way that is not of this world, really.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it is what it is. But I think, yeah, what you're saying, give that person some grace. There's a lot of patience and a lot of leeway that has to be had, because there is going to be emotions that come out in ways that are not,
Yep.
it's not about you. It's just the vehicle in
Right.
the moment.
Yes. That's a good point. Like the ego needs to be taken out of it because it's typically not about them,
No.
right? We're in a different headspace.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it brings, I've talked about this in some of the previous podcasts, your tolerance for everything is brought down, right?
yes.
Your
Yes.
patience, the tolerance you would have normally for patience, in customer service, if things aren't going your way, or like, with a significant other, or in your professional situations, like all of that tolerance is like knocked down to nothing. So
Right.
what you normally would have tolerance for and patience for, you just don't.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
which brings me to another question. These were not on your list. Sorry, these came up.
Oh, no, no worries.
You're getting questions you weren't briefed with. You can always say pass.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Next. So that talking about that kind of patience, like I can't think of anything that requires more patience than taking care of children. And so,
Mhm.
you know, you you've you mentioned earlier that your daughter can kind of recognize when you ride the waves of grief, right? And she
Mhm.
pointed out, oh, is it because of this? She can kind of recognize it. And I think that's so great that like you're not hiding it from her, you're not giving her like a weird lie, or like
Right.
anything like that. She can kind of just see how it is, and she's witnessing firsthand how someone goes through that thing and deals with that thing, which I think is super healthy and probably going to be really a good lesson for her to tolerate and deal with life. Um,
Right.
is there anything else about that with parenting that like you want to share it like to maybe people who either don't have kids or people who do have kids, as like a, I don't know, I just find that whole scenario like interesting.
It has been interesting is she's at the age where she's asking a lot of questions. Um, and because my mom wasn't that honest with me about anything, I've kind of vowed to be super honest. And growing up, I did not fully understand what happens when people died. Like my whole world was rosy and peachy, and there wasn't anything traumatic really didn't happen until my dad and mom died. Um, so I kind of want them to grow up knowing like the world isn't rosy and peachy and some things are going to happen. So she has asked, like, why are both of my parents not here, but both of daddy's parents are here? And I have to kind of navigate those questions with honesty. And, my parents both died and why? And then she wants to know how they died and she wants to know. So I kind of give her like bits and pieces so she knows like what is death and what's
Hmm.
going to happen, without, scaring her.
Hmm.
But just communicating with her and being honest so she doesn't, you know, I don't know. I just don't want her to have this view of life that I had where like nothing bad can happen
Yeah.
because it's not true.
Yeah, it's one thing to be like believe in Santa Claus, and it's always
Yes.
it's always
Yes.
sad when you find out. It was very sad for me when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. I was like, "Oh my God," but that
Yes.
magic was so cool. And
Yeah.
that's fine, that's like whatever, you can get over that, but like if you think the whole world is like that until you're in your 20s, it's going to be really rough because now you've
Yes.
got more time under your belt, and it's the
It's a
more
shock
time.
to your system.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Bad things can happen to me?
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
there's you guys start building that resilience early, like but
yeah. And I
and
know
I think
it
that's what you're
probably
doing.
sounds, yeah, I think it might sound harsh to some people who maybe haven't experienced grief, um, like maybe such big losses, but um, I don't want her to be shocked and thrown off course. Like I want her to be able to like have the adequate tools to handle this in the future.
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, as someone who was having existential crises at 12 years
Yes.
old, like I needed people to be real with me.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
It
I
felt
know.
real weird when people weren't because now I feel like I'm being gaslit and I'm having existential
Yeah.
crises. Yeah. You know?
I know.
So, yeah, okay. That's I think that's spot on. I think that's exactly how it should be. I think that's going to be really healthy for her. I'm glad you're doing that. Um have you in these postings that you've done on
Yeah.
from time to time on Instagram and whatnot, have people reached out like and been like, thank you for saying this, and then kind of shared their story?
Yes, so many, and that's just it. Like so many people just want to tell their story and they feel like, oh, this is someone who gets it. And so that's why I like to post about it because a lot of people have said thank you. Like no one talks about this. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to say to people. Even people that haven't lost anyone, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know I shouldn't be saying that. Like I didn't realize it wasn't helpful." Um, but yes, a lot of people open up and share their stories and just want an ear to listen. So it's been nice.
Yeah, I find that that seems to be a common thread is that usually when someone exposes their own experience,
Yep.
that it gives other people the freedom or the um, confidence to kind of share
Yes.
their experience.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really, really a great part of that. I'm glad you're doing that. I encourage other people to do that too. That's kind of the whole gray maybe thing, was to kind of encourage through conversation to see if people would kind of be willing to kind of open themselves up and have some of those conversations or share their experiences and whatnot.
Yeah. And it can be cathartic too. Like I didn't realize like making a silly reel would like I would just bawl after I made the reel before I posted it. And then it was so helpful to get that grief out that day. And that's why I tell people too, like it seems silly. Like some of these things are probably really silly, the reels, but it just feels good and it helps me. So if it helps me and it helps someone else, like I keep doing it.
Well, the thing is that I think the interesting thing is that, social media, as much as like, everybody has opinions on it, it is kind of a neutral thing. It
Mhm.
is kind of how people use it. And I think if you're making reels that someone who doesn't have access to support groups or doesn't know how to utilize that or didn't even realize they were having certain feelings until they saw a reel
Right.
you posted, I think it can be super beneficial. And, I think the reason why social media is so popular is because it does feed that partner brain that wants connection so desperately.
Yep.
And I know as we go through our world, connection becomes, kind of less or more and more scarce, less available because of how big our tribes are now and how far away from people we live that might be our family or our immediate, people.
Right.
I think that searching for connection becomes greater and greater. And I think that the reels that then a reel like that touches some of that is trying to go through that. I think it's like the opposite of silly. I think it's like one of the greatest gifts that stuff can be. Not everybody
Right.
has access to those, support groups or is willing to or can, find the wherewithal to look that up. Some people live really far away from other people and they're just kind of with the people they're with, and that's just how it is. And those
Right.
people may not get them at all. Um, One of the things that I really want to try to continue to do, and I think is super important, is when to make sure people are seen, right? And I think that's what you're
Yes.
doing when you do that. It's like you're putting this thing out there and you're representing a club, that not everybody
Yep.
wants to be a member of, but nonetheless, they may be a part of that club. And they get to be seen, much like when someone on Mother's Day, I always try to do this on Mother's Day and Father's Day, mostly because I wanted this too, was like, the the little animated picture of like, hey, this is for people who have lost their this person or have a complicated
Yep.
relationship or don't have this or have that. It's just so like everybody can kind of be seen, because these days, while well meaning, can be incredibly triggering for people who aren't in that same situation. And we do live in a world now that is social media and hyper focused on seeing other people. So it's not just like you can say just avoid it, but it's kind of everywhere. Mother's Day
Yeah.
special, this and then the flowers on the street are being sold for the thing and the thing. Like
Yeah.
capitalism ain't gonna let you forget.
Yeah.
So
No.
so
No, that's for sure.
so you can get away from social media, but capitalism will follow you everywhere. It's not gonna let you
I
forget.
know.
So I think these things actually become like really important, and I encourage everybody to kind of, you know, when they can try to see as many people as they can see and be honest about their journeys.
Yeah, I
So,
totally agree.
um, still going through grief because it is kind of like an everlasting kind of
Yeah.
process. Um, what would you say you still need from people today? Or are you kind of like, I'm good, like I'm here kind of to help other people and I can ride my own stuff? Or is there still stuff that you're like, oh, you know what, I could use this?
I think for me now, I need more people to talk about my mom.
Mm,
Like people, I mean, it's been almost 7 years and people are still scared to talk about her.
hmm
And I just want to talk about her. Like I'm so grateful I got to talk about her today. I just want to talk about her. So I don't want her memory to go. Like
hmm
I don't have videos and I don't have my phone. I got a new phone. I don't have any of her voice messages anymore. I can't hear her voice. So I want people to like tell me stories and remind me about things that maybe I didn't know about my mom so I can learn about her still. Because I miss her and
hmm
I want to see her and feel her and hear her as much as I can.
hmm
So I kind of need that. I think people think that you're doing okay, so they don't ask anymore.
Well,
Like after
yeah,
7 years, they're like, oh, she's fine. Which for the most part, I am. I've
yeah,
learned to move on, but or live with it. But just maybe every now and then, someone to ask like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like especially on those Mother's Days and
yeah.
stuff like that.
It is interesting how when someone passes, the feeling to let them live on in speaking is like a double
Hmm.
assault, right? When you feel like you
Hmm.
can't talk about them feels like also a second death. And
Yes.
I don't know, like I don't know how we as a society can change that. I want it to change though, and I don't know, like maybe there's a vehicle for that comes up somehow, like some kind of a, maybe it's a social media thing, maybe it's something else where people, there is this uh, like the whole point is to talk about that person or something. And I don't know what that
Right.
is, and I don't know, but it's so crazy because I still think people really are so uncomfortable with hearing other people talk about the deceased. And I don't know
Yes.
why that is. It's not like,
I
especially
know.
if people aren't like blubbering, crying, like, where other people just can't, like, and now
Right.
their nervous system is all like, how can I make them feel better? If they're just like, yeah, let's talk about
Yeah.
it. I want to talk about the things. So
Yep.
I,
It's
I don't
like
know.
we talk about them at the funeral or the, celebration of life, and then it just seems like they're forgotten.
hmm
And like obviously for us, they're never going to be forgotten. So
hmm
I want to know that she isn't forgotten by everyone else too,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I try to bring in some of the things my dad would always say or things that I thought were funny. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things my dad said that were not funny and very inappropriate that I will never say. But there are some things where, like, I'm driving and someone's driving very badly,
Yeah.
and like if someone in the car is like upset that they're not driving fast enough, I'm like, my dad would say, "Well, Jill, do you really want them to go faster?" Like implying that like they're doing the best they can and like this is it and like you don't want them to lay on the gas. Like trust me.
Right.
I just think it's like little things like that are just kind of like
Yep.
really funny that I like to bring up. Um and I guess also now that you have children, do you see traits of your mom in your children?
Oh, 1000%. My daughter is like, first of all, she's a spitting image of my mom, and then like a little bit of me, but mostly my mom. And then she's fierce, just the way my mom was. Um, so I see her and like my mom's brothers are still alive, and they'll see pictures of Parker, and they're like, "That's Kathy, like that's your mom." Um,
And do you believe in reincarnation?
I do, I do, but I don't think because no, I don't think it's Parker. I think a little bit of Pierce, um, which is interesting because I went and saw a psychic or a medium
Okay.
once
Yeah,
when I
give
was
me this
pregnant with
story. I want
Parker.
to yeah, I
After,
want to hear this
yeah, yeah,
story.
yeah. After my mom passed, I was pregnant still with Parker, and I saw a medium, and she said that my mom was with a little boy with blonde hair, and I was like, at that point, I'm like, I'm not even having a second baby. Like, that, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
then out comes Pierce, you know,
Mm-hmm.
2 years after we had Parker with
Mm-hmm.
this white blonde hair. And oh, I remember she did say that they were standing together at water. Um, and now we're in front of a lake.
Mm-hmm.
And Pierce, like, I saw him one time just standing at the lake, just staring out. And I was like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, like, he's with my mom. Like,
Yeah.
it's like she knew him before I did, you
I
know?
love that. I love that. That's a great story.
So, yeah, yeah,
Um, Also going back, I that just reminded me when you were saying that, your older child asked you a lot of questions and stuff.
yes.
Do you ever just be like, I don't know?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Because she's like, what happens when you die? And I said,
You're
I
like,
don't
I don't
know.
know.
I honestly have no clue. I don't know what happens, where we go, what we feel, nothing. I don't know. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, okay, okay,
Yeah,
mommy.
right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like when I asked questions, I feel like everybody had an answer for me, but they didn't know.
No.
They didn't
I know.
know, so they're just lying. They're just saying
Just making shit
whatever,
up.
just making shit up,
Yeah.
saying whatever someone else said. I'm
Yeah.
like, but nobody really. Some of these questions nobody does know. So why are you lying? Okay, I
I
love that.
know.
I love that
Yeah.
you're honest, so honest with her.
Oh, I mean, she asked me like if my mom was buried, and I said no. She was cremated. But how
Hmm.
do you explain that to a 6-year-old? And I was like,
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you do that. You definitely probably don't want to get into the details of that. Because as
no.
an adult, I have a hard time, and I'm like neither one is good. Buried, cremated, like it's all bad to me because I cannot
Hmm.
separate myself from my body enough to like get there.
Right. Yep.
Um so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do. Yeah, I'm going to need to bring in an expert. I
Yeah.
need an
How did,
expert.
yes, a
I need
child, like
a child
grief and children.
psychologist or like a book. I need a book. I need a resource. If any, I need a
Yes.
source. I would not know.
Yes. That's what everything I read was like, to be super as honest as you can with children about
Mhm.
death, so they can understand it. But I didn't know how to answer that question. I was like, you could ask your dad later.
Nice, nice. The old go to the other parent.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
That's good. That's good. Well, Kara, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
So on the podcast, I try not, like I said earlier, try not to give unsolicited advice to people in general. It's very hard for me. But I will say, like, do you have a suggestion for anyone who might be suffering, like, really in it, like in the deepest part of it? Do you have any kind of suggestion for them?
If they can, to find one of those groups so they don't feel alone, or I mean, therapy was the best thing for me, um, especially while I was pregnant, to find someone that I could talk to professionally.
Hmm.
Um, and then just to know you're okay, you'll get through it, and feel your feels. Just feel your feels. You There's no way out but through. So
Hmm.
you got to just kind of keep going through it.
Yeah, and I think, and I have been through my own griefs, but you know, I don't think I've had, like all the griefs are different. Everybody is different,
Yep.
but I can say that I think there's this idea that like if I start crying, I'll never stop.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
there's that feeling for people that are like, if I start now, I'm never going to stop. And like, if you've never cried your whole life, yeah, that might be true for a while, for a second,
Right. Yeah.
but it will eventually surpass. And
Yes.
then you can get really good at letting the feelings come and riding the wave when they come. And
Yes.
then if you can do that when it comes, I mean, obviously not every second of every day you can, right? You're in a board meeting for all of us who have our cubicle jobs, which is neither of us. But anyway,
Yeah.
like there's not always, sometimes you really do have to kind of push it
Yeah.
down and move on.
Right.
But more times than not, you can have those moments, right?
Yeah.
And to allow yourself to have those moments, to really have them and let them kind of, peak and then flow and just go, you
Yep.
will move your way past. But if you keep saying, I'll deal with this later,
It's going to
it's,
come up. It's going
yeah,
to keep coming up
and it's going to
and
be bad.
harder.
It's going to be
Yep.
bad. It's going to be bad. And you will
Yep.
keep yourself in a purgatory of pain, I
Yes.
think.
Yes. And then
Um,
that also breeds illness too
yeah,
when you're just holding everything in. So
yeah,
you want to get it out and,
yeah. And
just
before you
put it
know
out.
it, you're having a fit on American Airlines, or you're at the counter somewhere
I mean, yep,
losing your shit
losing your shit. Yeah,
because really you're sad.
exactly. I think that's what happens to a lot of people.
No, I think so too. Like, and trauma, but like there's
Yeah,
usually trauma is because of something very sad that was witnessed or experienced.
yeah.
So I think that's a really, really good advice, sound advice. And Cara, I cannot thank you enough for
No, I am. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
continuing to, like, talk about grief, because I really, when I decided to do this show, I was like, who do I know that has been through it? And I was like, Cara, she talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
And like that, like, I can't imagine for other people, you must be that resource too. Like there have to be people in your life that know that about you, have to be like, oh, you got to talk to my friend Cara. I got to talk to Cara. Like, Cara
Yeah.
knows about
Yeah.
this. Cara knows how
Yeah.
to do this. Like I think it's invaluable. It's like being a specialist in the tribe. Like, like the a witch doctor of grief. Like it's like go see Cara. Go see her. She knows.
Yeah.
She's been there and to the other side.
I've never been considered an expert and I didn't think it would be in grief, but here we are. And people do, they'll send me like random Instagram strangers will send people to me and be like, hey, go talk to Cara. And
Hmm.
um, it's nice. It's nice to be, helpful to people. I didn't expect it, but I like it.
Yeah, I think that's also something that's really helpful in dealing with any kind of a recovery from anything, even if it's an ongoing life recovery, is helping other people as a service.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
service to other people and things can be super helpful in getting through that. And I think you offer
Yes.
that. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of a brand of yours. So I love that. Okay. Cara, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for giving me your time today.
No. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. It was so fun.
Thank you so much. I've been keeping tabs on Cara from afar for a while, and it was so great catching up with her on Gray Maybe. I'm so thankful to her for being transparent about complicated grief and the feelings of shame that it can bring up. I think it's so important to remember that while we struggle with grief, there are younger people around us that may have even less tools or ways of coping. I wonder how I would have encountered all the different griefs throughout my life if maybe I'd had some help with recognizing and processing grief, like Cara is able to do with her children. What an important gift to give. I can't thank Cara enough for giving her time and coming onto the podcast and talking with me today. If you're listening to this episode and you're experiencing grief, welcome, and I hope this helps your journey. You're not alone. Just a reminder for anyone who needs to hear it, you don't need to have experienced a giant catastrophic event or a death to experience grief. Know that whatever you're feeling, there are those among us who have probably felt it too. You're not alone. If you're listening and you have someone you love in your life that is grieving, welcome. You are also not alone. We as a society have a long way to go in being able to tolerate and help those closest to us manage grief. I've included a link in the show notes for the do's and don'ts, which I'm going to read here. Don't assign positive meaning to their loss. In our effort to encourage and support the griever, we may try to project the current situation into a better future way too soon. Saying, time will heal all things, is not helpful. Prophesizing a future positive meaning on top of the grieving person's crushing and devastating loss tends to minimize the griever's current agony, essentially suggesting that they sweep their pain under the rug while focusing on some potential positive long-term outcome. Stay in the moment with the griever. Follow the grieving person's lead. Be an attentive, active listener. Allow the griever to take the conversation where it needs to go. Make room for plenty of silence. Don't jump in to fill space with unnecessary commentary. Sometimes, before a two-way conversation can even begin, the griever just wants someone to sit with, literally or virtually. No questions or words of comfort are needed to fill silence. Presence is often what the griever really needs. On their own, sometimes the grieving person will identify a silver lining or hopeful thought that adds meaning to their loss. This is a normal and often constructive way to cope with grief. Remember, the griever is the only person who can know what this loss means to them. Only the griever can make meaning of their experience. Once they do so, it's appropriate to support them in their newfound hope. Use the name of the lost loved one. While you are comforting the griever, all of their emotions are tied up in the loss of their beloved. Saying their loved one's name out loud is a way of validating the life of that person. Say Anne, not your sister. Say Alan, not your son. Say Stu, not your husband. Don't ever be afraid to mention the person lost. Grievers want to talk. Memories are all that remain after a loss, and talking about the person who died helps to keep them alive in broken hearts. Refrain from platitudes. Refrain from platitudes, religious or otherwise, like, they are in a better place, or time heals all things, or everything happens for a reason. Don't pretend that you know the answer. You don't. No one does. As a person who desires to support a griever, pay attention to what you say. Never say anything that starts with the phrase, at least. Comparing and contrasting your own grief experiences or dreamed up hypothetical ones with the reality of the loss that just happened is missing the mark in several ways. Making your loss the topic of conversation is asking the grieving person to switch their focus and empathize with your grief at a time when the total focus should be on them. Don't say, I know how you feel. You don't. Seems to me describing how something worse could have happened represents a thwarted attempt to say something, no matter how unhelpful. Stay out of your empty word, ill-informed autopilot script. Choose not to go there. Be open to the expression of any emotion. As an active listener, be open to any emotions the griever may express through verbal or nonverbal means. Anger, yelling, silence, rage, disbelief, denial, crying, pacing around the room, shouting, rocking back and forth, wringing hands, clenched fists, avoiding eye contact, needing to be held, avoiding touch, etc. Be observant about what the griever is expressing, overt or subtle, and allow a safe space to be in that moment. Do not in any way tell them not to feel what they are feeling. Remember anniversaries. Try to remember anniversaries such as the birthday of the person who died and the anniversary of the date of their death. Sending a card or a text will let the griever know that you are remembering too, reminding them that they are not alone. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. If you'd like to show your support for this podcast, consider making a donation on Spotify. It would also be very helpful if you could rate, share, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to contact the podcast, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com, graymaybestories@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Gray Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor, Roderick Barge. Cover photo by Jose Perez. Music licensed by Pixabay. Special counsel, Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporter, Patty Olgan. Until next time, bye for now.